There's a big story this morning. There are some dire new warnings from top military officials on the fate of our national security. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff testified before Congress that $1 trillion in automatic defense cuts, he says, could lead to war.
We can't yet say precisely how bad the damage would be, but it is clear that sequestration would risk hollowing out our force and reducing its military options available to the nation. We would go from being unquestionably powerful everywhere to being less visible globally and presenting less of an overmatch to our adversaries. And that would translate into a different deterrent calculus and potentially, therefore, increase the likelihood of conflict.
So the Pentagon faces $500 billion in cuts over the next 10 years if Congress cannot agree to a budget deal before then, and that doesn't seem to be very likely at this point. So those cuts would come on top of the $492 billion that President Obama and Republicans already agreed to last summer, and the Pentagon had said that those cuts in and of themselves were pretty tough for them to handle. Nonetheless, these cuts that may be coming on top of it. So joined now by New Hampshire Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte. She is on both the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Senate Budget Committee. So this is right in your wheelhouse, Senator. Welcome. Good to have you here today.
Thank you.
Good morning. So tell me, what your take on this is, what the impact would be. And we all remember, just by way of going back for a moment, this sequestration, which would enact these cuts, were all due to the budget talks that fell apart several months back.
It's because the super committee didn't come up with the savings, and here we are. I think it's irresponsible to allow these types of cuts to go forward. You heard the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff say yesterday that there's increased potential for conflict because when America is not strong, other rogue actors around the world, they'll act. Look at where Iran is right now, trying to acquire the capability of having a nuclear weapon. This is not a time to undermine our national security. And what's deeply troubling, Martha, is the Assistant Commandant of the Marines has said that if these cuts go forward, the Marine Corps will be unable to respond to one major contingency. Think about it. We need to protect our country, and it's irresponsible for us to allow these hatchet cuts to our Department of Defense.
I want to bring in some sound from Leon Panetta on this because he thinks that the place that you're standing is largely to blame. Let's hear what he says.
It was designed as a meat axe. It was designed to be a disaster. Because the hope was, because it's such a disaster, that Congress would respond and do what was right.
Yeah, so these cuts, he's saying, were designed to be so onerous that there was no way that a budget deal wouldn't be reached because nobody would want to get to the place that we are at right now. And yet, we let it happen, and there doesn't seem to be any signs coming that there's any avoiding it at this point.
You know, that's right, Martha. That's actually why I voted against this deal. I thought that from the beginning we should have just done our jobs and come up with the cuts that needed to be made without undermining our national security. I'm the co-sponsor of a bill that comes up with alternative spending reductions because I don't think that we should fall down on the foremost responsibility we have to the American people. So I've been asking members of both sides of the aisle, come to the table now. And also, where's the president on this as the commander-in-chief? He should be leading an effort to make sure that we come up with alternative cuts so that we don't hollow out our force and put our men and women in the military at risk or our country at risk.
It also seems very out of balance in terms of what the cuts would be if the budget deal was not reached, because the burden of them really falls on defense.
Yes.
And it raises the question, wouldn't it be better to have, sort of a shared pain program where defense, which Republicans tend to, be more supportive of, and then entitlements on the other side would have equal pain, so that maybe that would force everybody to the table.
Yeah, unfortunately, our Department of Defense is taking a very disproportionate number of these cuts, and that's our fundamental responsibility to the American people to keep us safe. And Martha, you're absolutely right. If we actually did a budget, let's not forget I serve on the Budget Committee. It's been 3 years since the Senate Democrats have wanted to do a budget. If we took on the big picture of spending, we wouldn't be undermining our national security with this. So Congress, we need, particularly the Senate Democrats, need to come forward with the courage to address these fiscal issues, and the president as well, because we can do that and make sure that we're still safe.
I got to go, Kelly, but what are the odds that that's going to happen before the election? Any budget possibilities before the election that fend this off?
I think there's going to be a lot of pressure around here because we're also talking approximately, according to the George Mason University, 1 million jobs.
Yes.
And notices for layoffs are going to go out before the election. So members of Congress need to address this now so that we can make sure that America remains strong.
No, you're right about that. There's a lot of concerns that these cuts would lead to 1 million jobs lost as well. And that's the other big pain in this program. Kelly, thank you very much. Senator
Thanks,
Ayotte,
Martha.
good to have you with us
Appreciate
today.
it.
There are some Republicans on the Hill.